Hello! In this video I am going to show you the easiest way to add some inhibitor into your central heating system using your Vaillant filter. Now the method that I'm going to show you can be used on any other system filter that has that 3/4 inch draining connection. Like the Spirotec filter, which is exactly the same as this Vaillant filter. There's the other Vaillant filter which looks like this, and of course Fernox's F1 filters, and indeed any other filter that has that 3/4 inch connection point. Now I'm using this Sentinel X100 rapid dosing kit. Now all the other manufacturers are making these dosing kits as well, and of course you don't have to use inhibitor, you could be putting in a cleaner, and of course I'm going to show you the easiest way to add this into your system via your filters. Now I would recommend try and use the same brand of inhibitor that is already in your system. If you look at your logbook, which is in your installation manual, hopefully there'll be some information in there which has been filled out and it tell you exactly what inhibitor was added into your system. Or you could look at the front of your boiler and hopefully there'll be a label on there telling you the brand and the date it was added to your system. In the description below, I'll leave some links to all the materials that I've used in this video, and of course to some different brands of these rapid dosing kits. Also down in the description you'll find some links to some videos I've made for the best settings for your Vaillant boiler. Along with that, not much known about comfort setting on your boiler. If you've got that turned on and you can turn it off, that's definitely going to save you some gas. You'll also find links to the 2 Vaillant filters and how to thoroughly clean those out. Right, now let's get on with showing you how to add this inhibitor into your system. So here is our Vaillant or our Spirotec filter, and we want to put some inhibitor into our system to protect it. Now here is the Sentinel X100 rapid dosing kit. Make sure when you pick up your bottle you got this piece on the side, and then we can just snap it off the side of the bottle. On the back of the bottle, like I said in my introduction, there are some instructions which I kind of feel are only really easy to understand if you actually know what you're doing and you've done this before. But don't worry, I'm going to show you exactly what you need to do so you don't even need to look at these instructions. Now the first thing I'm going to show you is that on the back here it says we can dose the system when the pressure is at a maximum of 2.3 bar. I'm going to say that's not really a good idea, and I'll show you why that is as we go through the video. So let's just check what pressure I've got in this Vaillant boiler right now. So on the front here I can light it with the display pressing the button. I can then press the radio symbol, press the button again, and then it shows me exactly how much pressure I've got in my system. I've got 1.6 bar. If you have an older Vaillant boiler, you'll have a pressure gauge on the front of the boiler, and the needle in your gauge should be roughly in the middle of the grey area, or round about 1.5 bar. Now just a quick note here, now I've left my boiler turned on just to show you the pressures in the system, but I recommend that you turn your boiler off because you don't want the central heating to start running and the boiler to fire up whilst we're doing this job. So make sure you turn your boiler off first. Now what we need to do is to remove the cap from the bottom of the filter, and then we can screw this part into the bottom of the filter. We can then add the inhibitor. Now there is a small problem when we come to do this. Now this thread on the bottom of the filter here is a 3/4 inch thread, which is the same as a washing machine valve thread. Now I'm just going to remove this cap here because it kind of just gets in the way. So I'm just going to slip this little plastic retainer off. There we go, so that's out the way. Now you can see when I come to screw this on, you see that this is a 1/2 inch thread, so it's not going to fit. So we have a bit of a problem there. So you're going to need to get yourself a couple of extra fittings so we can connect the filling tube onto our filter. Now here I have a couple of brass bushes and a rubber washer. Now if I take these 2 bushes apart, here we have a 3/4 inch rubber washer. Like I said, that is exactly the same sort of washer that you would get in a washing machine hose. Now this is a brass bush and it's an inch thread on the outside and a 3/4 thread on the inside. So it's an 1 to 3/4 brass bush. And here I have another brass bush, and this is a 3/4 to a 1/2 inch brass bush. Now these are not expensive, they're only about £1 each. And then I'm going to screw these 2 together like that. Then I'm going to push my 3/4 inch rubber washer into the center of the large bush. Now hopefully it's a tight fit. I'm just going to take my time and just wiggle it down so it goes into the center of the bush like that. You might want to remove the 1/2 inch bush just to make sure that the washer is in the center of the bush. Once I'm happy I've got the rubber washer kind of central in the middle of that larger bush, I can then just screw the 1/2 inch bush back into it. Now don't worry that there's only a couple of threads, we only need a couple because we're just doing this as a temporary thing, and as long as we've got a couple of threads on there then it's going to be absolutely fine. We can then screw the 2 bushes onto the bottom of the filter like that. Now I'm screwing up both the bushes at the same time because I don't want them to move, and I want to squash that washer that's in the middle against the filter. And there we are, I'm happy with that now, that's done up. We can now screw our 1/2 inch filling tube into the bush. Now we just want to take this bit off here, we don't need that anymore, so we can just throw that bit away. Now at the top of our 1/2 inch screw thread we got this little pointy bit here, and that's for use on an air vent valve, which you'll find on some filters and on all radiators. And if we try putting it inside the filter, it's not going to go up inside there because it's going to hit the top of the valve. So we need to cut this bit off. So we just get a little junior hacksaw or a sharp knife and just cut that bit off. Now if you use a junior hacksaw to cut it off, make sure after you cut it off you clean that little bit out, because there's going to be lots of little bits of plastic up inside the cap there, and we don't want any of that getting into our central heating system, so do make sure that you wash it off. And there you go, you can see that's all nice and clean now. We're now ready to screw that into the bottom there. Now just before that I'm going to just give the filter a bit of a clean, so I'm going to remove the magnet first of all. That just pulls down like that. It says clipped on, so there's no screws to undo, you just pull it down. Then I'm going to get a bowl, I'm going to put it underneath my filter like that. And then I'm going to get a small adjustable spanner and just open up the valve here. I'm going to see what water comes out and see how clean it is. There we go, got some water coming out. I'm going to close the valve again. Let's have a quick look and see how clean the water is. Now you can see this system is in good condition because the water is nice and clear and there's no little bits of magnetite coming out of the filter. Don't forget, if you want to know how to clean the filter properly, I've made a separate video all about how to do that. So now I'm going to attach the filling tube onto the bottom of the filter, screwing it into that 1/2 inch brass bush. And there we go, that's screwed in nice and tight now. Now before I go add in the Sentinel bottle, I want to check that the fittings here aren't leaking. So I'm just nipping this up with a adjustable spanner, and then I'm just going to open up the valve. Now the central heating water isn't going to come out when I do that because it's got this little stopper inside here. You see it inside the tube there, that little black thing. Now that little black stopper allows the Sentinel X100 to go in, and it stops the central heating water from coming out. So I'm just going to open up that valve now to test that the fittings are okay, because I don't want to start putting in the X100 and then finding it's leaking out of the fittings. Now you can actually see that the red part there where I've screwed it in is actually leaking. So I'm just going to turn the valve off again. I'm going to add a bit of PTFE tape around the red thread. So here's the PTFE tape, and I'm just going to put a couple of winds around this red thread so it screws in there nice and tight and makes a good seal. Now I could just screw it back into that bottom bush there, and again I'm going to do it up with the pliers just to make sure it's nice and tight and that PTFE tape is making a good seal. And there we go, I'm now ready to test it again. Now I decided just to use a pair of adjustable spanners and just do that red thread up just a little bit tighter to make sure there's a really good seal there and I'm not going to get any of the inhibitor leaking out. And there we go, that's screwed in quite a long way, and I know that's nice and tight now and it's definitely not going to leak. Of course, before I connect the bottle, I just test that again. It's going to open this valve up. Just remember the boiler has got pressure in it, so we're still at 1.5 bar, and you can see the bit of water went down inside the tube there, but there's no water leaking out from any of the fittings, so I know I've got a good seal there. So now I'm ready to add the inhibitor. Now you can see on the top of the bottle there's a little plastic cap on there, and when we screw it in, that's just going to break off out of the way. Now this picture here is showing you to connect the bottle for 30 seconds. I'm just going to show you the pressure in the boiler again. You can see it's actually at 1.5 bar. So we're now going to add the inhibitor with 1.5 bar of pressure in the system. Now when you shake this can of inhibitor, you can't hear any liquid shaking around, and that's because it's inside a bag. When I push the can up onto the bayonet fitting, you'll see that little plastic bit breaks away. There it is, you can see it's now broken off inside there. And you can now see the filling nozzle on top of the can. And now for the moment of truth. I'm going to connect the can to our filling tube. Now that little black stopper there, as soon as I connect it, it's going to rise up to the top of the tube. Connecting the can is pretty straightforward. You just push it on and give it a twist and lock it into the bayonet fitting. And then we just wait for 30 seconds. Now you saw the little black stopper there shoot up to the top of the clear tube as the X100 inhibitor goes into our central heating system. Now it doesn't matter what orientation you hold the can at, because the liquid is inside the bag and the compressed air inside is squashing the bag. Now that's been 30 seconds and I'm going to disconnect the can, and what I do is see that little black stopper shoot down to the bottom of the clear tube again, sealing it off. Now when I give the can a shake, I can tell there is still some liquid inside it. It's not really that I can hear it, but I can definitely tell there's some weight still in the can. To me, judging by the weight, it feels like there's still about half a can of liquid in the bottle. And of course, I really want to get all the inhibitor into the central heating system and not throw half of it away because it's still stuck in the can. But if you're happy with that, you can now close the valve on your filter. You can then remove your brass bush, and then we can just replace the cap and do it up. Then you want to run your heating to circulate your inhibitor around the system. But I still want to get the rest of this inhibitor into my central heating system. I don't want to be throwing half of it away. So now I'm going to show you the method which I use instead of following the instructions on the back of the can. Before that, let me quickly introduce myself. My name is Mark Ballard and I've been a gas registered engineer for nearly 30 years. The aim of my channel is to help you with your central heating and your plumbing. If you find this video at all useful, then please give me that little bit of feedback by clicking on that thumbs up or the subscribe. You can ring on the bell if you want to receive a notification, and of course you can share the video with your friends. If you visit my website, I've categorized all my videos and products and parts that I recommend so you can easily find what you're looking for. And I'd like to say a really big thank you to everybody who's bought me a cup of coffee and left me a donation in my Toolbox fund. It's really appreciated and it does really help me to make more videos which will hopefully help you. My method is pretty much the same, apart from we drop the pressure on the boiler right down to 0 before we go adding the inhibitor. Now the pressure on my customer's boiler here is still at 1.5 bar. I'm now going to run the central heating because I want to pump all of that inhibitor which I've just added to the system out to the filter and around the central heating system, because I don't want to drain the system and drop the pressure through the filter and then just drain out all of that inhibitor I've just added. So now I'm going to run the system for a couple of minutes to pump that inhibitor out to the filter and around the system. So now I'm going to remove the magnet and then remove the cap again. Then I get my adjustable spanner and then I'm going to open up the drain valve and then let the pressure drop right down to 0. Now if you have a heat only boiler and you don't have a filling loop and you have a loft tank instead, you would need to bung up your loft tank first of all if you want to add whatever is left in the can of inhibitor. And of course I made a video on how to bung the loft tank up. Otherwise, when you open up the drain valve on the filter, the water's just going to keep coming out because the loft tank would just keep refilling. But on a combination boiler or any boiler where you have a filling loop and a pressure gauge, all you need to do is to drop the pressure down to 0. We're not draining the system, we're just removing the pressure. So now I'm draining it off my second bowl of water. You can see the water is still coming out there, but it's going to slow down in a second and it's going to go down to a nice slow stream. I then close the valve. So I closed it then when there was still a little bit coming out because I didn't want any air to get back into the system. I can then reattach our filling tube with the big brass bush and make sure I do that up nice and tight so it squashes that washer and makes a good seal. I can now open up the valve. Now what's interesting here is when I open the valve, you'll see that little black stopper inside the tube go up inside the tube. So I know there's 0 pressure in the system because the little black stopper is moving freely up and down the clear tube. But as soon as I touch the can, you'll see the black stopper whizzes straight up to the top, showing that there's still pressure inside the can, and that inhibitor that's left in the can is now going into our system. Hooray! So I'll give it about 20 seconds and then I can remove the can. Again, what's interesting here is as soon as I remove the can, you'll see that little black stopper start to move, but it doesn't shoot down and stop it, it just moves slowly. So again, I know there's no pressure in the system. Now, is there any inhibitor left in this can? Now before we remove the filling tube, we want to close this valve here, so make sure you close that straight away after filling your system. I can then remove the filling tube, and you can see there's a little bit of inhibitor in there, so be careful you don't spill that anyway. You don't want to spill it like on your carpets. Now let's just reattach this filling tube just to see what is left in this can, just out of interest. And you can see there is a little bit of inhibitor just squirting out of the tube there. But now it's stopped coming out. So the can is completely empty. Now I'll show you what's left in the bowl here. I guess maybe if I drop the pressure completely so the water had completely stopped coming out, then maybe this little bit of inhibitor here would have gone into the system. I guess what I'm trying to say here is that on the can, it says you can top up your system with the inhibitor when the system is at a maximum pressure of 2.3 bar, which is actually a really high pressure. But quite clearly, if you drop the pressure right down to 0, you can get more inhibitor into your system. So my suggestion would be, if you want to add some inhibitor like this, you just want to clean your filter first of all. And when you clean the filter, drop the pressure down to 0. That way you would have given the filter a good old clean out. And now is a perfect time to add some inhibitor. And this is definitely the easiest way to do that. And don't forget, you can watch my video on how to thoroughly clean this filter. Again, you'll find that link in the description below. So now all we need to do is to top the pressure up on our boiler. So you can see the boiler is now flashing F22 and we've got low pressure warning of 0.1 bar. Now on this Vaillant Ecotech Plus, we have the filling loop underneath the boiler, and it's these two grey handles which I need to turn. So I'm going to open this handle here, and then I'm going to open the handle on the far left there. And that's going to let some water go into the boiler, repressurizing it. Now you hear a bit of noise when you do that. It's perfectly normal, and now we're just waiting for the pressure to get to 1.5 bar. And there we go, we can see the pressure is now rising up. Just press a button to light the display up. And now we've got 0.4 of a bar. And our tank level is starting to rise. So we want to get that black line roughly in the middle of the two dotted lines. There we go, you can see it's rising up there now. I'm just going to keep my hand on this valve here because I want to make sure that I shut it the right time. There we are, I've closed that one. Now I'm going to close this one here, like that. Now let's just check how much pressure we've got in our system here. So I can now press the radiator symbol. I can then press the bar symbol, and then I can see it's got 1.2 bar. So anywhere between 1 and 1.5 is absolutely fine. All you want to do when you've finished adding the inhibitor, you just want to run the central heating system and get that fresh inhibitor circulated all around your system. So basically just run the system until all the radiators are nice and hot. And there we go, that's it all done now. Our system is dosed up with our inhibitor. Now you can throw this tube away because whenever you buy a new bottle, you're going to get one of those. But you do want to keep these two brass bushes and the washer. So my suggestion would be to put a piece of string through all three pieces and just tie it to your filter. So you always know where it is in case you do want to add some more inhibitor in the future. And if you're a heating engineer, this is the easiest way I know of to add inhibitor into your system. So I always keep those brass bushes in my box now. And of course, if you're using the same inhibitor, you can just leave the filling tube attached to the bushes. So it's all ready to go. Because as you'll know, on all our service sheets now, it says, have you checked the inhibitor and is there enough in it? Obviously, adding inhibitor this way is really easy and it only takes a couple of minutes and the job is done. And of course, the homeowner is going to be paying for the inhibitor anyway, and hopefully they're going to want to keep their system in good condition. And of course, this filling method works on all those filters which have got that 3/4 inch thread, like the old and the new TF1s, and of course the other Vaillant filter, and lots of other filters. So that's about it then. So if you want to watch my video on 10 ways to reduce your gas bill, you can click on the video just here. And of course, you can click on subscribe, you can click on the bell, give me a thumbs up, share it with your friends, and there's always my toolbox friend. Bye for now, and I'll see you next time.